Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio is now on Netflix, and I watched it last night. Literally the last thing I watched before waking up to record this show. And it's a movie that I was looking forward to. I've been seeing promos of it, all kinds of behind-the-scenes look at the stop-motion animation that is the process used for this particular movie. Obviously, I recently also talked about Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, the horror anthology series that is also on Netflix. I am a fan of a lot of Guillermo del Toro's work, and he definitely has a very unique visual style to his work, not only this movie in particular, but also his previous films that he has directed. And it's kind of weird that this movie is coming out. Obviously, the Disney classic film of Pinocchio is a movie that I watched many times as a child, but I have not seen probably in 20 plus years. And I have really no desire to see the Disney live action remake, as most of the Disney live action remakes are pretty garbage, in my opinion. The few that I have seen so far, pretty disappointing in comparison to the animated movies that they are trying to double dip on the audience from. And also, I just don't want to. That one's starring Tom Hanks as Geppetto, and it's a bummer to see Tom Hanks doing a bunch of kind of bad movies. Elvis being a specific one that I've seen recently, and just it's a bummer. It is such a bummer to see Tom Hanks in. It's kind of like the downfall that you saw with Robert De Niro in a lot of ways, just doing these roles where it's just, what are you doing, man? You used to be so lovable and so good in movies, and now you're doing Rocky and Bullwinkle. But this movie, excited to watch, came on Netflix, excited to watch it, and for the most part, I like this movie. This movie is kind of interesting. Obviously, the visual style is gorgeous. The stop-motion animation, I absolutely love. I think it's, one of the best stop-motion animated things I've seen in a long time. Probably the last stop-motion movies I've seen were the Wes Anderson stop-motion films, which I'm not really a fan of Wes Anderson's stop-motion films. I prefer his live-action films. But this one I enjoyed. It definitely has a unique visual style. This movie is kind of dark in a lot of ways, despite being very beautiful, despite having very unique visual styles and very unique character designs for some of these characters. It is kind of dark, and it's a bit confusing in a way. Not confusing necessarily, but feels like a movie that at times is trying to be a kid's movie, mostly because of the songs that are implemented into this movie. Very much feels like a kid's movie, but the visual style, some of the characters, and obviously some of the story elements are pretty dark. It's pretty dark and pretty, not necessarily dipping into the horror genre necessarily, but definitely more, I would assume, to be more frightening for children. So it doesn't feel like it's completely made for kids, but then also has elements that feel like it's definitely made for kids. And because of that kind of contrast and duality of this movie, it didn't work as well as I would have liked. It would have been nice for it to kind of lean into one of the other. Actually, I would have preferred ditching the songs altogether, quite frankly, and just lean into the dark nature of this movie, because I would say the majority of this movie is dark. It's sad. It's wrestling with kind of heavy subject, whether it's fascism, war, death, trauma. It's dealing with like the kind of predatory nature of show business, of propaganda, of the military industrial complex in some ways, grooming kids to fight wars. Is dealing with some heavy stuff. It's also, again, dealing with death and the way it illustrates death. I really enjoyed, and I wish I think it would have been even more amazing, at least for me, as a 42-year-old grown adult, if this movie just leaned more into that and just scrapped. I mean, the songs are. There's not enough songs for this movie to feel like it's a musical necessarily, like some of the classic Disney movies do. But I just like, in comparison to the rest of the film, almost feel out of place and tonally very different from a lot of this movie. And even the cricket in this movie is clearly supposed to be a bit of comic relief, but I don't know if it's Ewan McGregor's performance as the cricket or the writing or the story itself, but I didn't feel like those moments that clearly felt like their intention was to be comic relief, I don't think they hit. I felt like, just in the same way that like the musical moments felt out of place, the comedic moments weren't funny, but I could see that it's trying to be like kind of comical, So I don't know why that is, but that's kind of the vibe I got from watching this movie. But overall, I enjoyed it. I don't remember the original Disney version of this story well enough to, which I probably a good thing, to really compare it, beat for beat. There's things about the original that I kind of remember, and I think this movie definitely touches on some of those things, but I think overall this story it almost feels like it's maybe closer to the original story in some ways, because it's going darker, it's dealing with the fascism in Italy and war, World War I, II. I'm pretty ignorant about history in a lot of ways, at least the specifics of it. So forgive my ignorance of when this is necessarily supposed to be taking place. And I doubt it. Yeah, it doesn't really say in the very small description on IMDb. But having like war being a big part of this, having those aspects, and just really grappling with what is this man Geppetto, who is loved by the town that he lives in, as this artisan, as this craftsman, as this guy who creates beautiful things out of wood and loves what he does, and has a lot of care for the work he does, and the metaphor of when he chops down a tree, he looks for the perfect pine cone to then plant a new tree to grow it back, where the saying of for every life taken, we lose a life, another grows, kind of a beautiful metaphor for what is this movie. A lot of the voice acting I love. I mean, like I said, Ewan McGregor, I enjoy Ewan McGregor. I don't know if he was necessarily, I think if things that I would have changed in hindsight, being somebody who doesn't work in movies at all, right? But if I had the magical wish that was bestowed upon the cricket in this movie, and I could fix this movie in some way, or attempt to fix this movie, I would say maybe casting somebody like the cricket, if they do want the cricket to be, if that was the intention for the cricket to add a bit of comic relief, I would say maybe getting an actor who is funnier, right? Like a comedic actor who is a little bit goofier with their voice work. probably would have helped. Not that I don't like Ewan McGregor. I just don't necessarily think he's a comedic actor off the top of my head. I'm not thinking of any movies that he's funny in. I'm sure there's moments in movies that he is, but I don't think he brought that to this role. But again, amazing voice. He's still a great actor. You have John Turturro in this movie. You have Cate Blanchett. You have Ron Perlman. You have Christoph Waltz, Tim Blake Nelson, Tilda Swinton. I mean, there's a lot of great voice work in this movie, and and very kind of great dramatic. Finn Wolfhard from the Stranger Things franchise show, like a lot of great dramatic actors. So, given all those kind of dramatic elements and those actors' abilities, it would make sense for this movie to maybe lean more into that real groundedness and maybe remove some of the lighthearted song moments. I mean, clearly there's need for some song. I mean, when Pinocchio ends up going to the carnival and being this sideshow in a way, being used as entertainment by Christoph Waltz's character, who's kind of the ringleader of this carnival, it makes sense that there would be music and song and dance in those moments. But there's a lot of other kind of musical moments in this that just kind of felt out of place. And there's this like running gag also with the cricket, where it's like every time the cricket is about to start singing, he's interrupted in some way, and it's just kind of this running gag, and then at the end he's able to do it. So it's like clearly it really feels like this movie is like the cricket is comic relief, but at no point was I laughing. Like, it had all of the beats and the essence of it being a comic relief part, but at no point did I have that. It always just felt like this somber kind of attitude. I don't know. But overall, I did enjoy this. And it's also a movie, a story that is a story about like a beware what you wish for type of thing. Where this movie could have gone dark if it wanted to. Let's take a little break from the show to promote gift certificates. If you want to purchase artwork for somebody, you have an art lover in your life, and you think they would like my art, but you don't know what painting to get them. I have over 2,000 original pieces of art for sale in my store, along with shirts and prints and other things. So I can understand that being a bit daunting if you're trying to buy something for somebody else. Give them the gift certificate, and then they can go to my website, inspireddisorder.com, and they can buy whatever paintings they want. They can buy whatever prints they want. They can buy t-shirts. They can buy hats. They can buy all the different merch. Gift certificates, which are available currently at inspireddisorder.com. And now let's get back to the show! Right, because Geppetto, I mean, it starts off sad. I mean, you have Geppetto and his kid, his son, Geppetto looks old as hell, and his son Carlo is like a little boy, so it's kind of a crazy. He doesn't look like his son. Regardless, it's like wartime. These bomber planes fly over town, and just in an effort to lighten their load, they drop whatever bombs they had remaining, and that just so happened to land in this town, in the church where Geppetto and his son were about to leave. And of course, the kid runs in, forgets his pine cone, and then bada bing, bada boom, kid no longer there. And it's like this sad thing of this montage of this downward spiral for Geppetto, who clearly loved his son, well regarded in the town, kind of stopped doing everything, became an alcoholic. And you see like this time lapse of this tree that grows, which the pine trees in this movie also do not look like pine trees. I don't know if Italian pine trees look different, but I don't know. It looked goofy. But you see this Italian pine tree grow clearly from the pine cone that his son had. So it's like a lot of time passes, and he kind of gets to a point where he's drunk, leaning against this tree, and decides to chop it down just after the cricket moves in. And he's like drunkenly building this puppet to replace his son that he lost. Like, it's a sad thing. And then there's this wood sprite that comes, which is super interesting character design, right? They showed like these ghost glowing eyeballs that are floating through the forest at one point that look really cool. This wood sprite looks amazing. It's like a combination of like different animals. The face looks like it's wearing a mask of a human face, but it has like, multiple wings. And it's like the character design is beautiful, which is also that played by Tilda Swinton. Also, the character of Death is a very interesting and related character to this wood sprite, and super interesting, but also kind of, I would assume, scary for kids, right? It just has that feel of like, and even other characters in this are very kind of dark and scary looking, right? Like easily things you could see and would fit and make sense in like a dark kind of a horror take on this story. But he builds this thing, wood sprite gives it life, and then it's like so many horror movies, or like Twilight Zone or Black Mirror, where this person who lost a loved one, in an effort to replace that loved one or to bring that loved one back, either by building a wooden puppet or cloning, or all of these different kinds of takes on that type of a story, how it generally goes bad, where this thing that's created isn't the thing you intended it to be and ends up causing more harm than good, like the beware what you wish for type of a thing. Like it becomes instantly a burden for this guy, where he regrets ever building it, and it becomes like more of a nuisance for anything. And it's like this story could have just kind of leaned into that even more and just gone even darker with it. But it always keeps trying to bring it back to like some lighthearted kids movie version. But, it like easily just like small changes, and this movie could have just leaned way into the darkness of it, and I would have loved it, right? I mean, maybe it wouldn't have. I don't know how well it's doing. I think it's rated fairly well. At least it was last time I saw on, at least on IMDb. I don't know. It's not even showing. Yeah, it's at 8.0, 8 out of 10 on Rotten Tomatoes. So not bad, but I would imagine this movie would be maybe, but like Guillermo del Toro's movies, like The Shape of Water, very weird. Like it's his movies and the stories that he chooses to tell are very difficult to really pin down in any kind of categorical way, right? They tend to, like Shape of Water is like this weird sci-fi, almost horror romance kind of a thing. Very, very, very stylized, like everything is, but in his kind of style, which I appreciate all of those things, and I appreciate the kind of novelty of the kind of vibe that he brings to a project. And I think that's why I do like this movie as much as I did, where I think if it didn't have the visual style, if it didn't have the interesting takes on things, and didn't necessarily dive into change some of the major aspects of the thing, I probably wouldn't have liked it as much as I did. But, it's good. And then even, I guess some spoilers. because just I think I've done enough of this non-spoilery opinions, and there's aspects that I'd like to talk about that might be spoilers. So, alert for those that maybe haven't watched it and want to get into it. So he gets brought back to life. He's chaos. He, is Geppetto's trying to make him act like and be his son Carlo. Clearly not going to work. That you also start seeing the people who are trying to prey on this kid, trying to recruit, trying to groom this kid for their own selfish purposes. You have the ringleader for this carnival trying to recruit him, trying to get him to be his sideshow entertainment. You also have the fascist guy who's trying to recruit him to fight in the war. And it's this kind of constant predatory thing to try and use this thing that's been created that can't die, that they're trying to monopolize on this creature that exists now. For war reasons, they want him to fight the war because he can't die. The carnival guy wants him to work for him because he is a puppet that is real and doesn't need strings. So it's a very novel type of a piece of entertainment, a sideshow freak, as it were. And then you have his dad, who pushes him away, calls him a burden, and this puppet kind of goes out on his own to try and make his dad love him. And then, of course, his dad goes out to look for him, gets swallowed up. The sea creature in this is amazing looking. When Pinocchio dies, he gets hit by the car and goes into death. He gets carried in this coffin by these rabbits that are mostly skeleton. Very creepy, very scary, I would imagine, for kids. The whole idea of how death is portrayed in this movie, very interesting. I loved it. It was dark. I was like, okay, right. But then there'd be this fun, lighthearted singing moment, and it's okay. Even the humor in it is very childish, which makes sense, I guess, because the humor is derived by this childlike character. So even when he goes to piss off Mussolini, right? Mussolini shows up for one of this carnival performance, and he does a whole song about poop, which, very childish and kind of it's that kind of funny, I guess. Even still, it was very child, which fits for the character, I guess. But this death scene and the kind of the rules, you see the death character, which is related to the wood sprite and voiced by Tilda Swinton as well, and has that kind of same glow, but a different design overall. And the rule of him being able to become alive again, but he has to wait for the sand in this hourglass to run out before, so there's a little bit of a time limit. He doesn't instantaneously come back alive. I love how that kind of comes back and becomes a crucial part of this story. I enjoyed that. The kind of adventure that this puppet goes on is fun, where he's, in this carnival where he's getting taken advantage of, then he leaves and then ends up getting, all of these people that are trying to recruit this thing for their own and to exploit this thing, he ends up being involved and getting recruited and getting, groomed in a lot of ways by these things, whether it's the carnival or whether it's the military and them trying to train him to be this perfect soldier for them. How he gets out of those things, how then he's able to sacrifice himself in order to save everybody, to save Geppetto. Kind of be, and then how that rule comes back into play, where he's gotta wait, and if he waits, then Geppetto's probably gonna die. But he could break the rules, and if he does, then he becomes mortal. Like, I don't remember any of that stuff being in the original, but I love that aspect of this movie. I thought it added a lot of interesting dynamics to this story, which I appreciate as well. Let's take a little break from the show to promote the benefits of Inspired Disorder Plus. So you go inspireddisorder.com/plus. Sign up, $5 a month. You get to binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free. You get to watch all of the live painting videos I do. You get a special members-only discount and deals for all of the artwork and merch that I sell. You also get the complete podcast back catalog of every podcast I've ever produced, hundreds of episodes, countless different podcasts. You also get access to my personal blog. A new blog comes out every week. In addition to that, you get my creative writing that I'm releasing. You also get access to Asking Me Anything. 14 years of experience podcasting. I've been creating art my entire life. I've been using Photoshop since middle school, and you can contact me to ask me questions about that or anything else. So those are the benefits for signing up for Inspired Disorder Plus. And now let's get back to the show. And there's the whole thing where Geppetto's like searching for him. How, right, you have Pinocchio kind of out ahead of everybody. Then you have the war effort almost following this carnival. So you have like posters that are on the wall that start off as these carnival posters, and then not that long after, you have the war right behind it, right on the heels of this carnival, almost as if this carnival is the last gasp attempts of entertainment before the war completely destroys. So there could be some metaphorical type of things going with how that was happening. And then behind the war effort was Geppetto kind of peeling away the war propaganda posters to see the carnival posters. And then even how the Pinocchio's musical act in the carnival becomes kind of a propaganda piece, as it were, for the war effort. You know, I mean, in Italy, the fascist ruling that was taking place there with Mussolini. It's just like a lot of subject matter that feels very elevated past the cheesy, immature, musical, lighthearted singing moments. But whatever. That's probably my problem, right? I don't know what other people's thoughts are on this. It just came out, so who knows? Let's see. What else? Did I miss anything? Death was interesting. And then you have Geppetto and the cricket. I did think it was cool. Like, the cricket moves into this hole in this tree to write his book. He's an author. And then right when he moves in, or a little after, the tree gets cut down, and that section of the tree is the torso of Pinocchio. So the cricket literally lives in a hole in Pinocchio where his heart would be. So, like, metaphorically, you know, the cricket is kind of, when Pinocchio is given life, the cricket is like, if you take care of this kid, you'll be granted one wish, right? And of course, initially the cricket wants to wish for success with his book, but of course how that factors in later, because Pinocchio broke the rules of death, no longer is immortal, only has one life left, but when he comes back, it is literally to sacrifice himself so Geppetto can live, but then the cricket ends up saving him. And then it's kind of sad because you see this like montage Like, it ends sad, man. Like, there's so much sadness in this movie. And you see, like, slowly how Pinocchio just outlives everybody. Like, he only has one life left, but, you know, he doesn't age, right? He's made out of wood, right? He's made out of pine. I don't know. Wood is pretty resilient over time. It doesn't decay like the human body does, right? So as long as he's safe, he's not going to die, apparently, and outlives everybody, right? And even the cricket, like, kind of heartwarming that the cricket is, you know, in this, like, little matchbox that's put into his chest. You know, it's like beautiful. It's sad, but it's also beautiful. It's watching, not only visually, but just, like, poetic in some ways, how the life of this puppet kind of turns into him taking care of all these people that at one time took care of him. But yeah, overall, I enjoyed the movie. Visual style, and I like the visual style that it, like, everything looks like it's made out of wood. It all has a very unique look. Like, it doesn't look like any other stop motion. It doesn't look like any other type of like, it just but it still has that Guillermo del Toro vibe feel to it, right? You could almost guess that this is Guillermo del Toro, especially with the creature design. Super interesting. But yeah, I'm very interested to see other people's takes on this movie, because I would imagine it's going to be kind of split, right? Especially if you're going into it thinking it might be a straight kids movie, going into it and feeling that, like, it's definitely feels very much more mature and darker, has an edge to it, but then, you know, see how people react to those moments where it's clearly has moments that are straight out of, like, for children. So I don't know. Overall, I enjoyed it. I think it could have been better. It's not going to be like my favorite movie of the year. It's not my favorite Guillermo del Toro movie. But I don't know. It might be my favorite. I'd be very interested to go back and rewatch the other Pinocchio movies. If only this would be the only reason I would watch the Tom Hanks live action one. But I know there's been a few over the years, live action, and then of course the Disney classic animated one. It would be interesting. If there's more than 5, there's at least 5 of them. Eventually I'll do a top 5, which would force me to rewatch all of them. And I wouldn't be surprised if this was my favorite out of all of them. Just because it is doing very interesting things. It has so much, like, the craft of it is so high quality. You know, and maybe watching this movie again, especially after seeing the other Pinocchio movies, I might come away with, and knowing the vibe of this movie, I might come away with more appreciation for it. So in the long run, and I think stop motion ages a lot better than animated movies. So I think this could be a movie that lasts a long time and becomes a classic in a lot of ways, which would not surprise me at all. And, you know, my opinions could be wrong, which it wouldn't be the first time I'm wrong. I'm completely okay with being wrong. I've changed my opinions on many things. I have come to the conclusion that I've been wrong on a lot of stuff. This could be another one of those things, given a long enough timeline. Things change, opinions change, and perceptions of things when you revisit them, coming in with less baggage or coming in from a different type of perspective, you know, it can hit you differently. So, but overall, I enjoyed it. It's on Netflix. Check it out. It's like a little over 2 hours long, so a little bit long, but it's an adventure. There's a lot of things that happen in it, which that's one of the things I do remember from the original, the Disney one, that it feels like a journey. It's a journey that these characters go on. And I do remember dark aspects of, at least for a kid, there were dark aspects of the Disney animated version. So anyway, I would recommend it, and I would also love to hear your opinions of it. I would love to hear whether you agree, disagree, or have completely different take on it than I do, and very welcome to hear those out. So check it out on Netflix. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio.
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.